American Revolution, which I was talking to you about, Lafayette had said that now we have liberty, we want a nation. So, United States of America is a huge nation. Now, coming to nation, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party both have very cordial relations with our government, the government of India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Barack Obama were very close friends, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Donald Trump are very good friends. So Venkat, I want to ask from you that after 3rd of November, whatever be the outcome of the elections, what impact it's going to have on government to government, United States and India?
See, India is a very important country for the United States, not just because you have 4 million Indians living in America as Indian Americans, and every year 1 million Indians go as tourists. Every year 200,000 Indian students go there for postgraduate studies, and half of them come back, the other half stays back.
Right.
You see? So, India is a very important country because we are 1.38 billion people. They are barely 325 million. So, that means India's population is 4 times America's population, but America's geographic size is 3 times India's size.
Right, it's huge.
Yes, a huge this thing. So
time difference.
That's right. So whoever is the President of the United States will be dealing officially with whoever is the Prime Minister of India. So the hug diplomacy between Obama and Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump, he was too fat anyway, he had a problem reaching out, and Mr. Modi, I would like to think will continue, and Mr. Biden will not hesitate to hug Mr. Modi, and it doesn't really matter to India anymore who is sitting in the White House, because there is bipartisan support for India in America. The Republicans and the Democrats, you know, they say India needs to play a very crucial, pivotal role in, you know, Indo-Pacific. Earlier they used to call it Asia-Pacific.
Right.
Now it has become Indo-Pacific.
Right.
You know, that only shows how important. And also, you know, we are, in terms of PPP, we have the third GDP after United States and China. And as Mr. Modi says in today's Economic Times, that by the year 2024, we want to be $5 trillion US economy by, you know, measuring by the dollars, not by PPP.
But we don't have any elections coming forward,
Yes.
so that kind of statement has to be actualized too.
That will, you know, what he was saying that, you know, for 8 months we were shut, but we'll work harder to reach that target. That's the point he was making.
Right, Ashok, what do you think is going to be the relationship between the two countries, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, whoever wins the elections?
I would tend to agree and disagree with Venkat in the sense that the demographic dividend of Indians is pretty much different in the United States, and the very rich Indians, very elite Indians have always been Republican supporters. The lower middle class and the middle class,
the
bourgeois class has
Yes.
always been supporters of the Democratic Party. But if you see, paradoxically, the Republicans have not been so anti-Indian as the Democratic Party. This is my assessment. I may be right, I may be wrong. But if you see the difference between the way Barack Obama operated and the way Trump operates, Trump himself has admitted in one of the last debates in Vermont, he said that Joe Biden, you're a politician, but I am not a politician, I'm a businessman.
Yes,
so it had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that he did not fall into the trappings of what they call the Washington administration administered policies.
Right.
So most presidents who came from politics and Washington always followed this set guidelines of the Washington. Trump was very different. So that's one of the reasons that while Barack Obama played the big brother role and tried to put pressure on North Korea, his enemy. But Trump didn't care a damn. It seems Trump said in one of the interviews that he had a chat with Obama before he became president, and in the thing, Obama said that North Korea is a nuclear nation, and that I see a distinct possibility of a nuclear war and annihilation with the North Korean people. But he says when he came to presidency, he went out of the way to reach North Korea. But the saddest part was when he was making his outreach to North Korea, they conducted 5 nuclear tests,
right.
so which was a slap on his face.
Right. But talking on this Indo-US relations, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has always talked of India first, make in India, and Donald Trump is talking of America first, and that all economic benefits should first come to America, and then he will think of expansionism or foreign policy. So what do you think about that?
Well, if you have gone into the history of trade and WTO negotiations, agricultural subsidies that the Americans have been giving to the farmers who are mainly in the southern states, and the southern states are essentially Republican supporters. They were the guys
the cotton planters.
Yeah, cotton planters, and they are the people who brought the slaves, Africans as slaves to America, and then they went against the abolition,
outbreak of the Civil War, because economic separation was taking place in the south of America.
They were against the abolition of slavery, and that's why the Confederation of States fought the Union of States.
Yes.
And finally Abraham Lincoln won the war, and America started raising the status of the blacks. Today some of the blacks occupy very top positions in the United States, and we are going to see Kamala Harris likely to become the Vice President of the United States, an Indian African American. Now, as far as what you're saying about the relations, as Venkat already pointed out, it doesn't matter who is the President of the United States, whether it's the Republican or whether it's the Democratic Party, because India is a very important country in this, what we call, shall we call it the SAARC region, in the Indo-Pacific region. India is a pivotal country in the sense that India is the most stable democracy here. We don't have, we are not like Pakistan. We don't have homegrown terrorism, and one of the reasons Trump and Modi came very close to each other was that both of them were totally against terrorism, and you will see that Trump cut arms supplies to Pakistan, and he was very tough on Pakistan and came much closer to India, and he said together we will fight against terrorism. And today we have an axis of powers. We have 4 powers that have come together, that is India, Japan, Australia and United States. So this is a new axis of powers that's going to operate.
Coming to the international diplomacy that you are talking about, Venkat, with China and America parting ways, so to say, and China giving support to Pakistan always, do you think that India will be more nucleus to United States?
See, when there was a time when the United States used to look at India in a hyphenated thing, India hyphen Pakistan.
Right.
But that changed, you see, when during the Clinton's time, Obama and Trump cutting off, weapon supply to the United States and all that. Everybody in the world realizes that India is 9 times the size of Pakistan. Pakistan was ruled for more than half of its lifetime by military dictators. India is a stable democracy. So any sensible democratic leader anywhere on the planet would want to be friends with India and not so much with Pakistan. China, because Zulfikar Ali Bhutto gave a part of Kashmir as a gift to China and created a border, and then the Americans were assisted by the Chinese, by the Pakistanis, to enable Kissinger to go to China to meet Mao Zedong during Nixon's time. That's why the Americans were grateful at that point of time. But even now they are not as friendly as they used to be, but they still need Pakistani assistance to get out of Afghanistan, because Pakistan wields a lot of influence with Taliban in Afghanistan, and which is why Mr. Trump, the American commanders are saying we are hoping to get out of Afghanistan by May, but Trump is saying, well, no, we'll be out by Christmas and all that. But on the 4th of January, if Biden comes, the plans will go for a toss, because Americans would not want to hand over Afghanistan to Taliban all over again, because they know what happened when Taliban took charge, deprived women of their rights, education and things
Human
like
rights
that. Yeah.
violations.
So Biden is not going to allow that. Trump, he wanted to, win a point, and he said, no, our boys will come back and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that is going to happen, because that will literally mean that Americans are handing over Afghanistan to Taliban. That will mean bloodshed. They do not want to share power with Ghani, the president. They want to be in control. So even though Ghani has released more than 5,000 Taliban chaps from prison, the attacks are still continuing. Every day you see in the papers a dozen people are getting killed, and some of them are Americans, you see. So I think there will be a tremendous change in American foreign policy if Biden comes to power, because he will go back to the Paris Climate Accord. He may hold back the American soldiers. Very few of them are there. Maybe 5,000 or less, and it's going to be very kind of interesting kind of situation.
Yeah, coming to the Paris Accord and the climate change, that's a very important subject globally. And President Donald Trump pulled out of that. And President Donald Trump also pulled out of the World Health Organization financial support for the weaker countries and the smaller countries. So these are not very humanitarian things to do.
No, I'm afraid not, and which is why you have these cyclones and storms sweeping across America, and the huge fires in California, and Trump refuses to admit that all this is happening because of climate change. He says that's poor management or some, it doesn't work like that, you see. So, all over the world you're having, adverse impact of climate change. And so Biden has said in his presidential debate with Trump that this is very bad, this is wrong. The first thing I'll do is, rejoin America to the Paris Climate Accord.
All the United States is a very cohesive nation, but these elections have also brought about division amongst the whites and the blacks, especially after the brutal killing of one of the black citizens in the United States. So Venkat, what do you think is going to be this total polarization in the minds of the blacks towards Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think the blacks are deeply upset by what happened to George Floyd, who was kneed to death, brutally. Even when he said, "Listen, I can't breathe."
Those images are very disturbing.
It's horrifying, and television has shown it all over the place, all over the world, and then that gives birth to the Black Lives Matter. And when thousands of people flooded the streets of American cities across the huge continent, Trump was being dismissive, and he called the federal police to disrupt and shoot. That kind of, hello, that doesn't happen. That is not a law and order issue. That is black anger against the manner in which white policemen treat blacks. You just kill them for no fault of theirs. And the American prisons are full of innocent blacks.
Yes.
This is highly ridiculous, and so this has upset not just the blacks, but all people of color, which include Kamala Devi Harris, because her father
Was
from
a
Jamaican,
black
and
American.
mother is a Tamil Brahmin from Chennai,
Right.
who's married a black man, which is quite unusual
Yeah,
actually.
but he's highly educated.
Yes, highly educated.
PhD in
Absolutely.
economics.
Do
Absolutely.
you think, Ashok, there is this racial polarization and division in the minds of the American voters?
Let's say I wouldn't like to say this, but it may seem an unfair comparison. It's something like the white and black issue is very similar to the Indian Muslim issue. And there is a certain amount of discontent in the blacks, which is always there, hidden under the surface. And once in a while, when an atrocity takes place, it comes out and they vent their anger towards the whites. Now, the whites are also, if you will see, historically, the whites that come from the southern parts of the United States are very racist, and if they are in the police force, they definitely act in a brutal
But
manner.
that's not the time of the American Revolution. Now it's a democracy.
No, but it's still there. That's what I'm saying. It is still there. So if you see what happened, what was George Floyd's mistake? He and another white friend of his, they traded a fake $20 bill. It's not a very big offense.
Right.
And the white man was allowed to go scot-free. Whereas the black man, when he protested, he was pinned down with his face down and then handcuffed, and then he put his knee on his neck,
Those
and then
were
I couldn't
really
breathe,
painful images
and then he
and
collapsed
videos.
and then died, and it became a very big issue, not only in the United States,
All over the world.
globally it became a very big issue of racial discrimination against the colors.
So you think that it's going to impact the minds of voters in favor of Democratic Party?
Definitely, because Trump, as Venkat Narayan said, called in the National Guard to control the violence, and he did not. He should have.
But
He
the
was
police
minced.
chief
He
was
minced. He
suspended.
minced. Yeah, no, the chief was not suspended. The Minneapolis police chief resigned on moral grounds and joined the agitation of Black Lives Matter. And he called in the National Guard unnecessarily, which made the blacks even angrier, and it started spreading all over. And Detroit is a black-dominated area, and Detroit was the scene of the previous incident in which one of the blacks was beaten brutally with batons by the police, and that created a lot of riots, you will remember.
Yeah, so to say, like in India, like we talk of unity in diversity, we have different religions, different racial communities, different castes. We have a lot of caste structure in India despite 70 years of independence. So, Venkat, now that we are coming almost to the conclusion of our debate on United States elections, do you think this President Trump's Hindu factor that he talks of is going to affect the minds of the people, the Indians in America?
You see, in Texas, 50,000 Indian Americans gathered for that Howdy Modi event in September last year, and recently a survey was conducted among the Indian Americans, and they said, we like Mr. Modi, but we don't want Mr. Trump as the President of the United States. There is a clear distinction between the two. So, in fact, when Trump came here, there was this big meeting in Hello Trump, that was what?
Namaste Trump.
Namaste Trump and all that. But, Americans, it's a bread and butter issue. They're not going to worry too much about, well, Mr. Trump is popular in India, so we must vote for Mr. Trump. It doesn't work like that, you see, because today's young people, they don't, they're not too attached much. They might see Bollywood movies and dance to the songs of,
The economic issues are more
economic
relevant.
issues, but you see, our people are highly educated.
Right.
It's not like the blue collar workers who go to carpenter going to Dubai. They are PhDs, they are so-called STEM, they have degrees from Oxford,
They are the brain
Ivy,
guys.
exactly, Ivy colleges, universities in America. So, I may not be exaggerating, but, it will be difficult for America to run that country without Indian Americans' contribution. Look at Google, run by Sundar Pichai. Look at Microsoft, Satya Nadella, Pepsi was being run by Indira Nooyi till recently. In the Silicon Valley, most of the startup companies were started by the Indians, you see, and their collective estimated worth runs into several $billion, you see. So, Indians are very, very important. Any chap who wants to become the President of the United States, if he ignores the Indians, he will do so at his own peril.
Right. So Ashok, coming to the almost conclusion of our debate, I think your perspective will also be important as to what is going to be the role of Indian Americans post-election results.
Yeah, India has a huge demographic dividend in the United States, as Mr. Venkat Narayan has already said. About 4 million people are there. What I'm trying to say is that the Indian contribution to the economy of the United States is immense. As Ravi Shankar Prasad, law minister, said when Trump started cracking down on immigration and freezing of green cards and reducing the admission of H1B1 visas only to postgraduate students because of the IT factor. So what happens is that when the Indian companies, IT companies like TCS or Infosys or Wipro, which sells a lot of hardware to the United States, these two supply a lot of software. They employ people in the United States below the minimum wages specified for an American. So my son, for instance, works for TCS in New York.
Right.
So he earns a salary of something like $70,000 a year. But if my son were to be brought back to India, the same an American is to be employed, then TCS has to pay $100,000, it's about $30,000. So it's a big crisis of revenues for the Indian companies. You will remember that when he signed the executive order on immigration and things like that, the stock market crashed, and the values of many of the top companies like TCS and TCS, on which the revenues of the Tata sons are built up, they all got wiped out, literally got wiped out. Infosys also got nearly wiped out. So they are all struggling, and Ravi Shankar Prasad has been making a very strong case with the United States. So that's why what I hear is from my sources that although Trump made a public statement about this, he has not deported any of the Indians who don't have postgraduate degrees, or but he has made a freeze on the issue of green cards with a rider, saying that new green cards will be issued only after the backlog is cleared. So that means he's not totally against giving green cards to the waiting list. So that's the point.
So two factors that are affecting the imagination of the people all over the world is human rights violation and empowerment of women. Women empowerment is very crucial to most of the nations of the world. So Venkat, as we were discussing, what is the role of women and empowering women going to be in the United States during elections and after elections?
Well, I mean, I would like to begin by saying, unlike in India, where women's employment is barely 25%, in America, practically every second person working is a woman. I want to concentrate on the manner in which Donald Trump has been treating women, the way he talks about them. He was very derogatory to Hillary Clinton and even Kamala Harris, and he called her a monster. He said she will convert America into a socialist country, and he said that within months after Joe Biden gets into the White House, it will be Kamala will take charge, that kind of stuff. This clearly shows he lacks finesse, he lacks sophistication, he doesn't know how to treat women with respect. And women in general, Americans in particular, are very conscious about this.
Rights of the women.
Rights of women.
Women protection.
Absolutely.
Women-related laws.
Correct.
And the judiciary coming very, very strongly in favor of women.
Absolutely. And every second person, voter is a woman. My feeling is that women are overall fed up with Mr. Trump, and they're going to vote for Biden, particularly because Kamala is the vice presidential candidate. This is for the first time in the history of the United States that a black and colored woman, whose mother is a Tamil Brahmin from Chennai and father is a professor from Jamaica. This is the first time, and people who have seen her, they're very impressed by the articulate manner in which she talks and all that. So I think most of the American women, educated ones particularly, are going to reject Trump even if they were Republican and vote for Mr. Biden and Kamala totally, and that is going to help this team, the Democratic team, to capture the White House on the 3rd of November.
There's interesting statistics that has come out in the American newspapers. It says that 40% of the voters are essentially the blacks who traditionally vote for the Democrats. Now they are saying that out of the 40% of the coloreds are the voters, and 20% are the blacks. So out of the 20%, I believe after Kamala Harris' nomination, it has jumped to 28% now, which means it just jumped to 28%. So which means that the Kamala Harris has actually bolstered Democratic's chances of winning against Trump, because traditionally people thought that Joe Biden is a very soft person and Trump is a very tough talking person. Now that has been removed because she makes up for his weakness. She's a very strong person.
But the thing is that oration is one part, oratory is one part, impressing the people is one part, and the voters actually voting for you is another part. So we will really have to wait till 3rd of November.
And not necessarily, because Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of California, and as a Senator of California, she has brought in a lot of reforms, and her track record is excellent in fighting for human rights and empowerment of women.
So friends, as we come to the conclusion of this very interesting debate on elections in the United States, perspective, the global issues, I must thank Venkat to you for giving such important views of yours for our viewers on AALAMI TV.
Thank you very much, Neelam, for having me on this discussion. We found it very interesting. It was a pleasure talking to you and Ashok.
Thank you so much, Ashok, for also joining in, and your views on economics, you being an economic editor, have been very, very helpful for our viewers.
Thank you, Neelam, for giving me an opportunity to talk, and I tried my level best to put issues in perspective. I hope I succeeded.
So friends, as we come to the end of this program, we just hope and pray that the whole world gets rid of pandemic 19 and everybody has a happy and a healthy life, and that the global nations coexist with peace and harmony. Please continue to join us on AALAMI TV on all national and international debates. Till we meet again, thank you very much.